channel. And for those of you who are new here, welcome. You're in for a lot of surprises. I do many things, but in today's video, I'm going to be reading some stories from Aesops Fable. This is a very good book. There are a lot of short stories in here with good morals. Well, that's enough of that. You can use this for sleep, or you can get a blanket and curl up on the couch with a cup of tea and listen to this as I softly read this to you. Enjoy. The Fox and the Mask. A fox entered the house of an actor, and, rummaging through all his properties, came upon a mask, an admirable imitation of a human head. He placed his paws on it and said, "What a beautiful head! Yet it is of no value, as it entirely wants brains." Moral: a fair face is but half a portion. The Oaks and Jupiter. The Oaks presented a complaint to Jupiter, saying, "We bear no purpose for the burden of life as of all the trees that grow. We are the most continually in peril of axe." Jupiter made answer, "You have only to thank yourselves for the misfortunes to which you are exposed. For if you did not make such excellent pillars and posts, and prove yourselves so serviceable to the carpenters and the farmers, the axe would not so frequently be laid to your roots." Moral: who will do, may do. The Dog and the Cook. A rich man gave a great feast to which he invited many friends and acquaintances. His dog availed himself of the occasion to invite a stranger dog, a friend of his, saying, "My master gives us a feast. You will have unusually good cheer. Come and sup with me tonight." The dog thus invited went at the hour appointed, and seeing the preparations for so grand an entertainment, said in the joy of his heart, "How glad I am that I came. I did not often get such a chance as this. I will take care and eat enough to last me both today and tomorrow." While he thus congratulated himself and wagged his tail, as if he could convey a sense of his pleasure to his friend, the cook saw him moving about among his dishes, and seized him by his fore and hind paws, bundled him without ceremony out of the window. He fell with force upon the ground, and limped away, howling dreadfully. His yelling soon attracted other street dogs, who came upon him, and inquired how he had enjoyed his supper. He replied, "Why, to tell you the truth, I drank so much wine that I remember nothing. I do not know how I got out of the house." Moral: uninvited guests seldom meet a welcome. The Ass and the Lapdog. A man had an ass and a Maltese lapdog, a very great beauty. The ass was left in a stable and had plenty of oats and hay to eat, just as any other ass would. The lapdog knew many tricks, and was a great favorite with his master, who often fondled him, and seldom went out to dine or to sup without bringing him some titbit to eat, when he frisked and jumped about him in a manner pleasant to see. The ass, on the contrary, had much work to do, in grinding the corn and in carrying wood from the forest, or burdens from the farm. He often lamented his own hard fate, and contrasted it with the luxury and idleness of the lapdog, till at last one day he broke his cords and halter, and galloped into his master's house, kicking up his heels without measure, and frisking and fawning as well as he could. He next tried to jump about his master as he had seen the lapdog do, but he broke the table and smashed all the dishes upon it to atoms. He then attempted to lick his master, and jumped out upon his back. The servants, hearing the strange hubbub, and perceiving the danger of their master, quickly relieved him, and drove out the ass to his stable with kicks and clubs and cuffs. The ass, as he returned to his stall, beaten nearly to death, thus lamented, "I have brought it all on myself. Why could I not have been contented to labor with my companions, and not wish to be idle all day like that useless little lapdog?" Moral: each in his own place is best. The Bat and the Weasels. A bat, falling upon the ground, was caught by a weasel, of whom he earnestly sought his life. The weasel refused, saying that he was by nature the enemy of all birds. The bat assured him that he was not a bird, but a mouse, and thus saved his life. Shortly afterwards, Bat again fell on the ground, and was caught by another weasel, whom he likewise entreated not to eat him. The weasel said that he had a special hostility to mice. The bat assured him that he was not a mouse, but a bat, and thus a second time escaped. Moral: it is wise to turn circumstances to good account. The Lioness. A controversy prevailed among the beasts of the field as to which of the animals deserved the most credit for producing the greatest number of whelps at a birth. They rushed clamorously into the presence of the lioness, and demanded her the settlement of the dispute. "And you," they said, "how many sons have you at a birth?" The lioness laughed at them and said, "Why, I have only one, but that one is altogether a thoroughbred lion." Moral: the value is in the worth, not in the number. The Gnat and the Lion. A gnat came and said to a lion, "I do not the least fear you, nor are you stronger than I am. For in what does your strength consist? You can scratch with your claws and bite with your teeth. So can a woman in her quarrels. I repeat that I am altogether more powerful than you, and if you doubt it, Let us fight and see who will conquer. The gnat, having sounded his horn, fastened itself upon the lion and stung him on the nostrils and the parts of the face devoid of hair. The lion, trying to crush him, tore himself with his claws until he punched himself severely. The gnat thus prevailed over the lion and, buzzing about in a song of triumph, flew away. But shortly afterwards he became entangled in the meshes of a cobweb and was eaten by a spider. He greatly lamented his fate, saying, "Woe is me, that I, who can wage war successfully with the hugest beasts, should perish myself from the spider, the most inconsiderable of insects." Moral: one may escape a great danger only to fall victim to a small one. The Oaks and the Reeds. A very large oak was uprooted by the wind and thrown across a stream. It fell among some reeds, which it thus addressed: "I wonder how you, who are so light and weak, are not entirely crushed by these strong winds." They replied, "You fight and contend with the wind, and consequently you are destroyed, while we, on the contrary, bend before the least breath of air, and therefore remain unbroken and escape." Moral: stoop to conquer. The Shepherd and the Sea. A shepherd, keeping watch over his sheep near the shore, saw the sea very calm and smooth, and longed to make a voyage with a view to traffic. He sold all his flock and invested it in a cargo of dates and set sail. But a very great tempest coming on, and the ship being in danger of sinking, he threw all his merchandise overboard, and hardly escaped with his life in the empty ship. Not long afterwards, on someone passing by and observing the unruffled calm of the sea, he interrupted him and said, "Belike it is again in want of dates, and therefore looks quiet." Moral: no hope of opulence is worth the risk of a competence. The Tortoise and the Eagle. A tortoise, lazily basking in the sun, complained to the seabirds of her hard fate, and that no one would teach her to fly. An eagle, hovering near, heard her lamentation, and demanded what reward she would give him if he would let her aloft and float her in the air. "I will give you," she said, "all the riches of the Red Sea." "I will teach you to fly then," said the eagle, and taking her up in his talons, he carried her almost to the clouds, when, suddenly, letting her go, she fell on a lofty mountain and dashed her shell to pieces. The tortoise exclaimed in the moment of death, "I have deserved my present fate, for what I had to do with wings and clouds who can with difficulty move about on the earth." Moral: pride shall have a fall. The Crow and the Pitcher. A crow, perishing with thirst, saw a pitcher, and, hoping to find water, flew to it with great delight. When he reached it, he discovered to his grief that it contained so little water that he could not possibly get at it. He tried everything he could think of to reach the water, but all his efforts were in vain. At last he collected so many stones as he could and dropped them one by one with his beak into the pitcher, until he brought the water within his reach, and thus saved his life. Moral: necessity is the mother of invention. The Eagle and the Kite. An eagle, overwhelmed with sorrow, sat upon the branches of a tree in company with a kite. "Why," said the kite, "do I see you with such a rueful look?" "I seek," she replied, "for a mate suitable for me, and am not able to find one." "Take me," returned the kite. "I am much stronger than you are." "Why, are you able to secure the means of living by your plunder?" "Well, I have often caught and carried away an ostrich in my talons." The eagle, persuaded by these words, accepted him as her mate. Shortly after the nuptials, the eagle said, "Fly off and bring me back the ostrich you promised me." The kite, soaring aloft in the air, brought back the shabbiest possible mouse, and stinking from the length of time it had lain about the fields. Is this," said the eagle, the faithful fulfillment of your promise to me?" The kite replied, "That I might attain to your royal hand, there is nothing that I would not have promised. However, much I knew that I must fail in the performance." Moral: promises may get friends, but 'tis performances that keep them. The Fox and the Monkey. A fox and a monkey were traveling together on the same road. As they journeyed, they passed through a cemetery full of monuments. "All these monuments which you see," said the monkey, "are erected in my honor of my ancestors, who were in their day freed men and citizens of great renown." The fox replied, "You have chosen a most appropriate subject for your falsehoods, as I am sure none of your ancestors will be able to contradict you." Moral: a false tale often betrays itself. The Eagle and the Jackdaw. An eagle, flying down from his eyrie on a lofty rock, seized upon a lamb and carried him aloft in his talons. A jackdaw, who witnessed the capture of the lamb, was stirred with envy and determined to emulate the strength and flight of the eagle. He flew around with great whir of his wings and settled upon a large ram, with the intention of carrying him off, but his claws became entangled in his fleece and was not able to release himself, although he fluttered with his feathers as much as he could. The shepherd, seeing what had happened, ran up and caught him. He at once clipped his wings, and taking him home at night, gave him to his children. On their saying, "Father, what kind of bird is this?" he replied, "To my certain knowledge he is a daw, but he will have it that he is an eagle." Moral: envy without prudence leads astray. The Wolf and the Shepherd. A wolf followed a flock of sheep for a long time, and did not attempt to injure one of them. The shepherd at first stood on his guard against him, against any enemy, and kept a strict watch over his movements. But when the wolf, day after day, kept in the company of the sheep, and did not make the slightest effort to seize them, the shepherd began to look upon him as a guardian of his flock, rather than as a plotter of evil against it. And when occasion called him one day into the city, he left the sheep entirely in his charge. The wolf, now that he had the opportunity, fell upon the sheep and destroyed the greater part of the flock. The shepherd, on his return, finding his flock destroyed, exclaimed, "I have been rightly served. Why did I trust my sheep to a wolf?" Moral: a false friend is more dangerous than an open enemy. The Manslayer. A man committed a murder and was pursued by the relations of the man whom he murdered. On his reaching the river Nile, he saw a lion on its bank, and being fearfully afraid, climbed up a tree. He found a serpent in the upper branches of the tree, and again being greatly alarmed, he threw himself into the river, when a crocodile caught him and ate him. Thus the earth, the air, and the water alike refused shelter to a murderer. Moral: evil cannot escape its consequences. The Mule. A mule, frolicsome from want of work and from overmuch corn, galloped about in a very extravagant manner, and said to himself, "My father surely was a high-mettled racer, and I am his own child in speed and spirit." On the next day, being driven a long journey and feeling very wearied, he exclaimed in a disconsolate tone, "I must have made a mistake. My father, after all, could have been only an ass." Moral: every truth has two sides. The Crow and the Raven. A crow was very jealous of the raven because he was considered a bird of good omen, and always attracted the attention of men, as indicating by his flight the good or evil course of future events. Seeing some travelers approaching, she flew up into a tree and perched herself on one of the branches, cawed as loudly as she could. The travelers turned towards the sound and wondered what it boded, when one of them said to his companions, "Let us proceed on our journey, my friend, for it is only the caw of a crow, and her cry, you know, is no omen." Moral: those who assume a character which does not belong to them only make themselves ridiculous. The Flea and the Wrestler. A flea settled upon the bare foot of a wrestler and bit him, on which he called loudly upon Hercules for help. The flea a second time hopped upon his foot, when he groaned and said, "O Hercules, if you will not help me against a flea, how can I hope for your assistance against greater antagonists?" Moral: small favors denied leave us hopeless for greater. Mercury and the Workmen. A workman, felling wood by the side of a river, let his axe drop by accident into a deep pool. Being thus deprived of the means of his livelihood, he sat down on the bank and lamented his hard fate. Mercury appeared and demanded the cause of his tears. He told him his misfortune when Mercury plunged into the stream and, bringing up a golden axe, inquired if it were the one he had lost. On his saying that it was not his, Mercury disappeared beneath the water a second time, and returned with a silver axe in his hand, and again demanded of the workman if it were his. On the workman saying it was not, he dived into the pool for the third time and brought up the axe he had lost. On the workman claiming it and expressing his joy at its recovery, Mercury, pleased with his honesty, gave him the golden and the silver axes in addition to his own. The workman, on his return to his house, related to his companions all that had happened. One of them at once resolved to try whether he could not also secure the same good fortune to himself. He ran to the river and threw his axe on purpose into the pool at the same place, and sat down on the bank to weep. Mercury appeared to him just as he hoped he would, and having learned the cause of his grief, plunged into the stream and brought up a golden axe and inquired if he had lost it. The workman seized it greedily and declared that of a truth it was the very same axe he had lost. Mercury, displeased at his knavery, not only took away the axe, but refused to recover for him the axe he had thrown into the pool. Moral: knavery may serve for a turn, but honesty is best in the long run.